Okay, so our next speaker is Richard McCoy. Richard McCoy holds a master's degree from New York University and a bachelor's degree from Indiana University. And he is also a former Fulbright scholar to Spain. And particularly pertinent to today's discussion, he is the founding director of Landmark Columbus, a non-profit organization that cares for the design heritage of Columbus, Indiana. Landmark Columbus is best known for its program, Zipped Columbus, which alternates between symposium and exhibition years and inspires community to invest in architecture, art, and design to make cities a better place to live in. You might think of New Harmony and Columbus as being siblings. They are. We are very lucky to have these two places in town, in the same state, and particularly lucky to have Richard come and articulate how they can be the joint. Thank
you, Thank you. So I grew up not far from here in West Lafayette, Indiana, on the banks of the Wabash. And I spent a brief time at Purdue University, and there at an apartment and occasionally overlooked the Wabash. And when I was finishing graduating from Indiana University, a professor of mine, during an award ceremony, made us all sing Back Home Again in Indiana. I can't carry a tune. We're not going to do it. You all can do that. I'm not going to stand on the stage and do that. But the song gets me sometimes, and it's usually during the Indianapolis 500 when someone comes out and sings it. And there's a particular verse that usually gets it, and it's, "The new mown hay sends all its fragrance from fields I used to roam when I dream about the moonlight on the Wabash." And here we are in this iconic and groundbreaking Athenaeum, again overlooking the banks of the Wabash, the river that used to be a kind of interstate waterway for thousands of years for the indigenous people that lived here. And so I want to recognize first, in a state named for Indians, the people that were here. We are on the ancestral lands of other people, those that used to fish the Wabash River, those who used to build their homes around here, and those that lit the sky with their fires. Below the floor is the land ceded to the United States by the Miami, the Wiyah, and Shawnee nations through the Treaty of Vincennes in 1884. These nations still exist today and still have relationships to this place. But back to that song. It's the moonlight overlooking the Wabash that to me represents a kind of place of dreams, a place out of reach that has enchanted all humans for a long time. And the moon itself represents hope. And so there's the moon up there, and then there's this other moon, this building. And to me, as a Hoosier, as someone from Indiana, someone that's here, I think this is an important place. It represents hope, it represents a dream, it has problems, but it's an important place that I'm awfully glad to be a part of today, and I thank you for the invitation. And I hope that someday, soon the Athenaeum becomes a National Historic Landmark. I hope it receives the country's most significant designation. And I also would like to challenge New Harmony to think a little bit about what it could be as a total place. Is that someday this whole town could become a UNESCO World Heritage Site. It kind of defines it within the world of special places. That to me is what New Harmony is, and it's a kind of moon out there that we all dream about. So thank you for having me. I'm going to talk to you today about our work. The mission of our organization, as Ben kindly said, is to care for Columbus's heritage, but also inspire other communities to look at that and to invest in art and architecture to make cities better places to live. I work with an incredible team. I'm just here sort of representing them. You know, also stand behind a number of funders that really make a lot of our work possible. So I come in here with a lot of gratitude. I'm gonna fly through 5 years of work and 150 years of history. It starts in 1871 in Columbus with the first investment in architecture, the county courthouse. And I'm just going to fast forward until 1941, when Eliel Saarinen and Eero Saarinen complete First Christian Church. It's one of the 7 National Historic Landmarks in Columbus, and it's the first sort of transformative investment in architecture and design that has defined that city for 75 years. I'm using old photos to think about the past. These are Balthazar Korab photos. The next is 1954, Eero Saarinen's former Irwin Union Bank and Trust. It's a beautiful building with an equally beautiful modern interiors. The iconic Miller House and Garden by Eero Saarinen, with landscapes by Dan Kiley and an interior by Alexander Girard. A little known building that's also a National Historic Landmark. It's Carl Varnecki's Mabel McDowell Elementary School. The iconic North Christian Church by Eero Saarinen, again with landscape by Dan Kiley and interiors by Alexander Girard. Harry Weiss First Baptist Church. And the most recent and youngest National Historic Landmark, which was built in 1971, is the Republic Newspaper Building, the former Republic Newspaper Building. It's now the home of Indiana University's Master of Architecture program. So that's some of the history of Columbus. But one of the other big parts of the history of Columbus is that it's always had this idea of design incentives, not design control. There are no formal ordinances in town that dictate how you do anything related to using modern architecture. It's always just trying to incentivize it. And unlike many other communities in Indiana, it doesn't have a historic preservation commission. There are no formal controls on any of the buildings. It relies on a community that cares about them to keep them going and to keep them relevant, in the same way New Harmony does that. So our organization had this idea to try to care for not only the tangible heritage, but the intangible heritage. And that's what we've been talking about here for the past couple of days. There's the actual thing, but then there's the way that we use the thing and who we are and how we appreciate it. Those are distinct, but they're equally as important. So I'm going to first talk maybe a little bit about the tangible cultural heritage. And this starts with our work. I've been working in Columbus since 2013, and early on we started to have conversations not unlike this, brought in experts, figured out what we should do. We decided we should create an organization that had the sole purpose dedicated to this. We had more conversations with state leaders, national leaders. Here's the president of Docomomo here, who Michelangelo and I got to know well, and had good turnout in that. Then we started doing actual things together as a community. One of the things that we did was we cleaned up the landscape at North Christian Church. We would start to do it on a United Way Day to get guys from the factory to come out and show us how to really work. And then we did other more sensitive things. We learned to prune magnolia trees with an expert horticulturist. And some people climb trees to do it. It was great. But the whole point was we wanted to have beautiful magnolia trees that bloomed in the spring. We worked together to turn on this fantastic sculpture by Jean Tinguely. It's called Chaos. We started this program, and now once a month the library turns this on. We had bike rides to explore the history of Columbus. This is the old-time architectural bicycle ride. And we had the Mad Men bicycle ride. We did public art bicycle rides, which were always sort of fun and interesting to go out in the community and to explore different places together, including sort of writing in a kind of work of public art. We did things that didn't work. We had this idea that we could challenge the community to make Legos of all 7 National Historic Landmarks. As it turns out, that's really hard. And so we had one person do it, but he was like one of the world's best Lego guys. So it doesn't count, but we still had fun. People made things. This guy said, nope, I'm not doing it. Nope. We did other things that are more serious. In First Christian Church, the sanctuary skylight had been leaking for 10 years. We created a kind of effort that was between the church and the community and said, you can give money here and it can fix the skylight. You don't have to give money to the church. Through that, together, we raised over $165,000 and fixed the skylight and also added, this window that is here that had always been shaded up. And so now there's electronic shades that go up and you can see into it. Just this month, or just last month, we, with the help of Clyde G and Wei Ming Zhao, we had a painter who came to town and painted 17 paintings, and we had an art exhibition, and we're selling these online so the church can get a new audio system. So not unlike what's going on here. Also at that church, we did something, a little bigger resources. We got a Getty Foundation Keeping It Modern grant. And so this is a grant that's going to allow us to put together a conservation management plan. I'm not sure if they're going to continue the program, but it's something that this building would benefit from, or benefit to have as a conservation management plan, a plan that would guide where you could go. So those are some of the things we do on a physical level, or the tangible side of things. And thinking more about the intangible things, how do we work together? We created something called Exhibit Columbus. And we created this in 2016 as a program that would alternate between a symposium year and an exhibition year. Give us 1 year to think, and then the next year to do. And it was built at a time in Columbus, when Columbus had potentially receded a bit, right? And so by the end of 2010, the family that had been in town for many years, the Miller family, they had all left. At one point, there were 4 Fortune 500 companies in town. We're down to 1, and it's Cummins. And it's now a global company. Cummins has 50,000 employees. 40% of them work in the United States. 60% work overseas. And so there's questions about what Columbus is going to do with its heritage. And what we wanted to do was to create a program that would put Columbus back in the sort of global conversation about design. And prove again that Columbus is a significant place. And we started by looking at this family that had been there a long time, J. Irwin and Xenia S. Miller. The Irwin and the Miller family started Cummins Diesel Engines. And they were, of course, the family that built the famous Saarinen designed home. There's Mr. and Mrs. Miller in front of their famous conversation pit here at their house. And so in this effort, we made a symposium 1 year. We did the first year in 2016 in partnership with Michelangelo. He was one of the first persons we talked to about this. I heard there was a guy over in New Harmony who was doing these really interesting things. We said, let's go talk to Michelangelo, and he came over to Columbus. So this is, in a sense, Michelangelo, how we got connected. Through the symposium, we had conversations about design, and then we eventually dreamed up an exhibition. And this isn't a map of Cheerios. This is a map of the 17 installations that we made throughout downtown. The idea is, how do we activate the downtown, get people excited about going there, looking at these historic buildings in different ways, and bring new designers and new ideas to it. So I'm going to go through a little bit of the first year. So in each instance, we're pairing a designer with a place. So this is the Irwin Conference Center, the former bank, and there it's Dwayne Euler and Jenny Wu. And for their installation, they made a project that wrapped around 3 former bank tellers in the plaza behind the bank. Here's another look at it. In front of the I.M. Pei and Partners Design Library, Yugon Kim and Tomomi Itakaura made an amazing project that went well beyond our budget. They got a $250,000 grant from the U.S. National Forestry Department to create a new type of building material. This is called the Conversation Plinth, and as you can imagine, it was a huge hit in town. People loved it, and they also loved it because it lit up at night. It became a really interesting thing to do in town. At First Christian Church, Chris Cornelius of Studio Indigenous. Chris is a registered member of the Oneida tribe. He made something called Wikiyami. This is a project that references architectural and building styles of the Miami people of this land, sort of talking about wigwams and how wigwams were built out of young trees. It was a fabulous thing that was out in front of that church for a while. We made smaller scale things on Washington Street, our main street. Made a little window to Columbus that had an exhibition in the center of it here. We made these concrete benches. I say we, working with artists. I don't sing, I don't make anything, I just talk. And so we pulled up the street corner and made new new colorful concrete bricks. Made these kind of interventions at historic places, a new place to sit or to have a drink. We made a playhouse in between an alley that was perfect for people to go in. And we also wanted to engage with universities around the Midwest, particularly public universities. Columbus, like everybody can do, we draw a circle and say we're in the middle of it. And so we did that and said, actually, there's a lot of public universities within a very short distance, including We had an exception that year for MIT, IIT, Michelangelo was involved. And so we then stacked those universities, gave them a small build budget, and they made installations in front of the middle school. There's Ball State University, Ohio State University, University of Cincinnati, University of Kentucky, University of Michigan, which for whatever reason gave us pigs and fish in the skies. Up at North Christian Church, Indiana University made this sort of folded plastic structure you could go inside. It lit up at night. It was really beautiful. And as a way for us to engage with the next generation, we invited high school kids also to make an installation. Here's the first group from 2017. We gave them a site in the same way we gave the designers, and they made this really brilliantly colorful maze that you could go through. It was a really fun thing. And so also in 2017, we had some branded items. We tried to bring graphic design along with us. We made a little exhibition catalog. But really what we were making is an exhibition and a community that cares, right? And so how does the Athenaeum continue on? Is it if you all care about it. You keep coming and you're investing in it and you're involved. We do that through making together, learning together, playing with things, bringing your pets, finding new ways to love, and of course having a party. So through that year, we were really excited when we had a New York Times article that proclaims that Columbus, Indiana renews its big design legacy. It was a really wonderful moment. And so then the question is, how do you do it? How do you keep that going? It costs money. It should cost a lot of money. And so this is a challenge for us. It's also an opportunity for us to grow our network, to get new people involved in Columbus and get what we're doing, to learn the history of the place, and to find ways to engage and connect. So that was at the end of 2017. We were fortunate to have enough commitments to do it again for another 2 years. I'll quickly run through that. The question we asked ourselves at the start of 2018 is that how can we grow a program that more deeply engages with community? At the same time, tries for these to maintain an international or national standard of excellence. We went and looked back at 1986 when Mr. Miller was inducted into the National Building Museum in DC's Hall of Fame. And this is, well, it's a big enough screen, you might actually be able to read it. But in short, what he says is architecture is something you can see, but what he was proud of is the community and how it works together. And so he created an exhibition there called Good Design in the Community, Columbus, Indiana, that traveled a little bit in the Midwest. We thought that was a fantastic idea to think more deeply, about which to think more deeply. And so we created a symposium in 18 and an exhibition in 19. In 18, we partnered with Docomomo US and AIA Indiana, AIA Kentucky, and the Indianapolis Museum of Art to make a symposium in downtown Columbus. Columbus doesn't have a convention center, so we use the churches in the different places as our convention center. We had about 1,000 people that come. This is at St. Peter's Lutheran Church in one of the morning talks. Also at that former Republic newspaper building I showed early on, we had a conversation with university deans about their work in the Midwest. How can we grow a sense of design that relates to the heartland and isn't always so concerned about what's happening on the East and West Coast? Can't we have something here that we're concerned about in the Midwest? And so again, here's our friend Michelangelo on the stage. We were excited. You know, we work really hard to get our message out far in national publications, but you know, to continue to have this kind of conversation about what we're doing, we introduced a new term in that symposium. We called it progressive preservation. This is because in our community, the P word, as it's called, isn't so much enjoyed. It's this idea that we should be allowed to continue to make choices in our time that best serve us. It's certainly a delicate balance, but it's to say, how can we make choices together as a community that move forward and maybe not always be tied to the past. It's a delicate balance. So that was the end of 18. I'll quickly explain to you the exhibition that is up now. And so the 2019 exhibition is up, and as you can see, this is sort of downtown, and there's installations, again, 18 installations around downtown Columbus, and you can come see. It's free and open to the public. We start again with the J. Irwin and Xenia S. Miller Prize. And for each of these prizes, we try to recognize design firms in North America that have the kind of values and ideas that represent some of the traditions and values that Columbus, and particularly the Miller family, had in their lifetime. So in this way, we gave the first prize this year to a landscape architecture firm, Agency Landscape and Planning. And we identified a building in town that sort of needs some love. This is a building from 1971. It used to have this cool trellis that came all the way down, and it used to be filled with wisteria. It's sort of been completely taken off, and it sort of stopped paying attention to landscape. You can see these trees are practically dead. And so we wanted to find a way to bring that back to life. Agency, we think, did a really interesting job at that. At the courthouse, we wanted to think about what we do as a county. Soil, which is a Brooklyn-based firm, came up with an idea to create a kind of field of 130 arborvitae trees. These trees will be there until December, and then we'll donate them all to the Miller House and Garden, where they'll replant some of their arborvitae. It's a super cool place to hang out in the middle. At Central Middle School, we invited Mass Design Group, who are based in Kigali, Rwanda, and Boston, to create a project, and they came back and gave us a cornfield, which is great. We give them a lot of freedom and to sort of choose whatever they want to do, but it actually worked out really well. This is a cornfield with picnic tables in the middle of it, right next to a middle school. The middle school kids are literally in it every day, learning about science and math and plants and food. It's really been an extraordinary project. Back at the library we saw earlier, Frida Escobedo Studio from Mexico City made an installation that brought greenery and light to an otherwise bland, not bland, I shouldn't say that, a lot of pavers and sort of a very stark plaza, and brought it to life in an interesting way. And how did we do all of these things? So much of our project relies on community support. Here is the entire elementary school next to it coming out in shifts to help us plant 3,000 plants. Gives us a new performance space downtown, to imagine different things happening in the community. At City Hall, Bryony Roberts Studio made an installation. This is the center of City Hall here. The mayor's office is up here to the right. This is a new place for people to hang out in City Hall, to have events, to have memorials, to have protests. At Washington Street, again, we're thinking about the main corridor at a different scale, and we're trying to invite designers to think about community in different ways. At this one, a Borderless Studio from Chicago created a project that's almost a preservation project. This is our downtown theater that's been boarded up since 2014. She made this curtain here that goes on it. It's called Love Letter to the Crump. And you can't see it, but each one of these little symbols was made by somebody in the community. So this is sparking a real interest in bringing the performing arts back downtown to Columbus. Pienza Sostenible from Mexico City brought a project next to the bank that talks about bee culture and the environment. Again, we're thinking about universities. I'll just focus on two. And these two universities, of course, I mentioned the newspaper building. There's now an architecture program in there and two new young architects. They wanted to create a kind of entry portal to their architecture program to invite the community in to their school, and also to point their students out into the community to use it as a place to research. At St. Peter's Lutheran Church, Chris Battaglia from Ball State University really took on the most ambitious project for any of the university professors. He used a robot back at Ball State University to 3D print 160 pieces to create a pavilion next to this church. It took him about a month longer than after the opening, but he got it done. It's really exciting. As far as we understand, it's the first 3D printed sculpture, or 3D printed kind of enclosure. And it's the concrete company that he worked with as the first time they ever do it, or they ever did this. This is going to be taken back to their headquarters in Texas. Up at North Christian Church, Marshall Prado from the University of Tennessee created a 30-foot tower that sort of is in conversation with the spire at North Christian Church. It's a super fascinating place to go and visit. Again, we're thinking about the high school and how the high school kids can find a way in. It's now become a kind of competitive and interesting thing for the high school kids to get involved with. They're making their plans to be involved with it. And so we gave them also this site across from St. Peter's Church. In this case, 8 kids selected as leaders to build an installation they called Density. And it talks about how out in the county, there's few people that live, but as you get close to the city, there are more people that live. And inside of those, these kind of light up boxes where they invited their friends in the art program to make drawings that represent downtown Columbus. It was a fascinating project to work with them and to be able to see kids in Columbus actually building something in school. And so for an entire year, they worked every Thursday to build that installation. And you can see them here in this video. They actually did it. You know, the professor was very much hands-off and just said, you know, you guys do it, I'll help you out. And so it was a really extraordinary project and involved hundreds of kids from the school when it was finally done. Again, we're thinking about the total design experience when you explore that. And so we use a graphic designer who created this really beautiful exhibition guide. And I brought some with me, and there's a few out there. This explains to you what the exhibition is, and it's kind of a keepsake. We try to make things like you all do that are keepsakes. And then we also wanted to be able to have clear paths around it. So he made this kiosk here, which tells you not only the history of the place, so this tells you what Central Middle School is, but on the other side, it tells you who the designer is and about the installation. We wanted families to feel really welcome in this project, and so we created a family activity guide. This is sort of like the National Park Service's, if you've ever used that, they have a Junior Ranger program. The idea that you can complete activities in here around architecture. So it's a pretty big exhibition, and we do then try to have a party at the end of the year to sort of celebrate as a community to come together. It becomes a homecoming for the community. It's free and open to the community. And of course, we invite people to come and attend and to look at Columbus in a different way. We'd love to have businesses see this as an interesting town and move business there. And also, there's a lot of community program that happens that we have no control over. And that's great. And so, for example, this year the library is doing a community book read. A dance troupe from Indianapolis came down and did a site-responsive performance at 3 of the installations. Next to our office, the Arts Council created a mural that opened just after our event. The library, which is celebrating its 50th year, put up an exhibition, and it has all sorts of things going on during this fall to sort of celebrate the architecture and design of their library. That's our mayor learning about the library. A skate park just opened in downtown Columbus, and again, they used an interesting designer, and we like it because dogs like it. It makes Columbus a fun and interesting place to go downtown. So that's Exhibit Columbus. It's open until December 1st. I'm just going to briefly talk about a few other things that have happened since we started doing this. In Indiana, there are not a lot of nonprofit organizations, I don't know if there are any really, dedicated to architecture and design and community. And we've been invited to do some other things. So in Indianapolis, we worked with a nonprofit to run a conversation series over 4 months about inclusion, equity, dignity, and justice in design. We were invited to run a $20 million design competition in downtown Indianapolis at the former General Motors stamping plant. Next week, we're hosting the Mayor's Institute on City Design. This is a program of the U.S. Conference of Mayors and the National Endowment of the Arts. So we'll have mayors from around America coming to our town to see it, and then we're going to help them think through some design challenges. I tell you all of this because I think that Columbus and New Harmony should find a way to work together. I think we should align the moons of Indiana. In a certain way, Columbus is a kind of moon over there, or another planet. But for a cultural town, which the professor from University of Southern Indiana said, what are cultural towns? This is a cultural town. Columbus is a cultural town. For a state that's more known for sports culture, I think it's remarkable to have 2 places, and I'd love to find ways that we could work together. I think it'd be fascinating to have installations of temporary art and architecture here in 2 years when we have the next exhibit, Columbus. So I thank you, and I'm happy to take some questions.
Thank you, Richard. You have done an extraordinary job in Columbus, and we're so glad to have you here. Any questions from the audience?
Just the information, Terre Haute, Indiana.
Hold on a sec. We're supposed to be getting you mics, or?
Yes, yes.
I'm pretty loud. But I moved here 3 years ago from Terre Haute, Indiana, and
Julia.
is that not very long? Sorry.
There you
Hold on. There you go. Hi. But anyway, they've done a lot of things with the water, because they're on the Wabash also. So, I appreciate I don't really have a question, I just appreciate your enthusiasm. My favorite thing about Columbus is the bridges, and that's an architectural thing too. So, I just want to say thank you, and I appreciate wanting to do something in harmony that way, because it has got a lot of history.
Well, thank you. We're connected also by a river. The East Fork of the White River eventually finds its way to the Wabash.
Right.
The Western Fork of the White River runs through Indianapolis and finds its way to the Wabash. Terre Haute, of course, is on the Wabash. West Lafayette's on the Wabash. What if there was if you start to get really big into thinking, what if this thing was about rivers?
We
Connected?
did, in 2013, I was living there, and they did a whole thing about water, so a lot of my paintings during that time, every painting I did that year was about water, so, it was about the Wabash, so.
In
it's
a
wonderful.
town known for geology, it's
Right.
not lost on me that we're in the upper Louisiana Valley. We share a watershed, we share a place.
Right, wonderful.
And
So
Julie,
thank-
part of the celebration was to bring people together
Right.
to spur a new vision.
Yeah, it's really cool.
And I'll use Connie's term, like a third wave in many ways. And so I'll tell you, we've already had a wonderful working session this morning talking about connect points and residencies and what have you. So absolutely, there are definitely opportunities for us.
Well, thank you so much.
I do have a question as well. I've been in Columbus numerous times. One time I was there, I was told there's a Richard Meyer building there, that it is an elementary school.
That's correct.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I just thought maybe it might be interesting.
It's not as good as this.
It's a later one, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
We have no CD. We'll give you that.
So I visited Columbus maybe 3 years ago, and I don't know how I missed it, but there was a huge flood in Columbus. Was that
There was a
after
100-year
your
flood.
time?
There was a 100-year flood in 2008
So
or 11.
are they still talking about it? Did
They
did
made
the
a lot
buildings survive it?
FEMA required a lot of infrastructure in the city. I mean, so there's been a lot of adjustments.
And is it still kind of in the thinking, or it's over now and people are back to normal?
Probably the latter.
And did they learn something from it? And were they able to come
I
up
don't
with
know.
a plan
I
for
was
the
not
next
there.
100-year
I
flood?
was not there during the flood. But, so one of the things that we think about, so our exhibition is up right now. You should come see it, it's free.
But also at the same time, we're thinking about what do we have a symposium in 2020? What's the theme of that? And how does that carry into an exhibition? So if you start talking about water and floods, waterways that, I think a natural theme could come out. You can get to notions of resiliency. You can get into notions of environmental challenges. And also recreation. You think about the way the cities today have stopped turning their backs on rivers and polluting them wildly. They've actually seen them now as an asset to a city. Cities all around America are actually starting to look at their rivers and their cities as a tremendous asset rather than a thing where they just don't.
Thank you, Richard.